newscasts on the way in today, and he has not been publicly seen in a couple of days, from what I understand. They most of the messages, or all of the messages you've seen, have been pre-recorded. Now, I'm not saying what that means. We don't know, but more, I guess, will be revealed. But certainly overnight, Israel has been hit again. Of course, there's a 6 or 7 hour delay in the time between here and there, but they've been, it's mid-afternoon there by now, but they've been hit again and again. And I think it's approaching about 30 civilians that have been killed, quite a few more wounded. As far as I know from this morning, no actual Israeli soldiers have been killed. There have been some wounded. One of our kind of extension of our embassy in Tel Aviv, because our main embassy is in Jerusalem, but apparently the U.S. Embassy offices, I don't know exactly what they call it, that is extension office, I suppose, satellite office in Tel Aviv, sustained some damage overnight. And so depending on how you look at it, that would mean what? That America facility has been attacked, right? I mean, I'm not trying to push this thing out, but you could potentially read it that way. So far, at least at the time that I'm speaking right now, none of our installations have been hit, and I think Iran is pretty carefully trying not to do that. Now, maybe they would do it through some of their proxies, but of course the proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis have been diminished quite a bit, so I guess more will be revealed there. But I'm going to use a little bit of a template here from a Breitbart article. President Trump said, if we are attacked in any way, shape, or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. Armed Forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. And one thing about President Trump, he doesn't make idle threats. Promises made, promises kept. And I have no doubt, and the Iranians, I don't think, have any doubt, when you go back to how they being the U.S., killed Soleimani back during Trump's administration, how they basically obliterated ISIS and all that back in those days. So I believe Iran has taken Donald Trump very serious. But Trump took to social media to predict Iran and Israel should make a deal and will make a deal. Now, here's the question I have about that. Is that even possible? Is that even possible to make a deal with Iran? Now, we were trying to negotiate with them leading up to this attack. And let me just spell out a few things for you, because you don't hear much of this on the media. I've got some pretty strong sources inside of Israel myself, and I'll let them remain anonymous. But they assured me, this was months ago, that had Kamala Harris actually won the election, God help us if that had happened, that Israel would have hit Iran right after the election, because they've been preparing to do this for a while. So they gave a window of time, not only for Donald Trump to get his feet under him, so to speak, as president, which certainly didn't take long, but also to give him a legitimate time to potentially negotiate some type of peace deal. But keep in mind this, ladies and gentlemen, all through the peace deal negotiations, and even going back to the agreements that they had that Donald Trump got us out of in the first administration, Iran was continuing to build their nuclear capability all the time. And during this last few months, they've actually escalated it. Everyone in the world knows that. They've escalated it. So I say all the time, do I trust Iran to live up to deals? No. But I do trust Iran on one thing, and one thing only. I take them at their word. Death to America. Death to Israel, death to America. All in the same sentence. Sometimes it's Israel first, sometimes it's us first. But I believe that if they could, let me ask you this. Is there anyone out there that believes that if Iran, the Ayatollah, and I'm not talking about all the Iranian people, and we'll get to that in just a moment. If the Ayatollah could push a button and obliterate the United States, that they wouldn't do it immediately? I don't think there's any question about it. But I ask again, is it possible to have a deal with these people? I'm not sure. And keep in mind this, ladies and gentlemen, you hear the Democrats a lot in progressive media, which seem to be one and the same, come out with this idea that if we just stuck to the agreement that Obama started with the Iranians and all that, that everything would be rosy, that Donald Trump created this situation by getting out of that. Now, first of all, I don't believe that's true. But secondly, and this is the most important thing, the deal that Obama created with Iran allowed them to ultimately have a nuclear weapon. It did not forbid them from having it. It did not make it ironclad where they could not have it. It simply extended the time. So they were on track to come out and said very clearly, Iran cannot have a nuclear missile. They cannot have nuclear missile bomb capability. Period. End of story. So I don't know if it's possible to actually make a deal with them. According to this Breitbart article, the growing conflict between Israel and Iran is testing Trump, who ran on a promise to quickly end the brutal wars in Gaza and Ukraine and build a foreign policy that more broadly favors steering clear of foreign relations. And to a certain extent, that's true. One of the things my colleague Ted Yoho, and if you're just joining us right now, the captain of our Political Pirate podcast, Ted Yoho, is traveling and not able to join us today, which is my loss and yours, of course, too. We wish him all the best. But he tells you all the time that that one of the things that he thinks that Donald Trump made a mistake on was promising, especially peace in the Ukraine and all that on day one and stop the war in Gaza and both on day one. That was a tactical mistake because it's proven to be elusive. And I don't hold it against him. I get it. But I agree with Ted in the sense that it probably should have been stated differently, that it was going to be a major goal of his administration. But according to this Breitbart article, and I've heard some of this myself, these are some Republicans or people on the right, as they like to label it, as the media does, that have come out potentially against us involving ourselves with Israel. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, who I have a great deal of respect for, Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk, likewise there, and Fox News or former Fox News host Tucker Carlson are among the prominent backers of Trump who have argued voters backed Trump because he would not involve the nation in foreign conflicts. And I agree with that 100% in the sense that, yes, Trump said that he was not going to do that. And he really has kept that promise through his first administration and so far during the second. Does that mean that we don't get involved at some level? Is that even possible, especially when it comes to Israel? Is that even possible for us not to be involved in that? Is it wise? That's another story. And what about the Ukraine war? How does that apply there? Is it possible for us to stay out of it? I don't think really it is. And, in an ideal world, could we literally be an island to ourselves and the oceans protect us like they used to, basically? Yeah. In an ideal world, I could see the United States being totally unencumbered by foreign affairs, but we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world dominated by human beings and all of our character defects and flaws, and I certainly have plenty of them myself. But here with Israel, go back to what I said earlier, and I'm going to ask you again. Is there anyone out there that believes that if the Ayatollah in Iran could push a button right now, could sit here and just push a button and the United States would be obliterated, that they wouldn't do it? They wouldn't have done it yesterday or the day before? I don't see how in the world we can get by that. Now, I saw, and I haven't seen the show, I don't guess it's out yet, but there's one of those shows where that guy, Josh, I think something, he's does all kind of exploring archaeological expeditions and all that kind of stuff. He's going to put out a show of something I had not heard about, where they found this bunker complex in Germany. I think it's in Germany, but it's certainly the Nazis. We're always talking about the Nazis, right? Where they were literally trying to create a bomber that they called the New York City bomber. That Hitler was planning, no big shock though, to bomb the continental United States, and was working on this before we ever went to war with them. And so I say all that, say it'd be easy to say, let's stay out of it. But I don't think that our enemies are going to allow that to happen. So, that applies to Ukraine. Think about this. How can you, on the one hand, say that Putin is wanting to dominate the whole world and wants to obliterate the Western world, especially, including the United States, and not be involved in the Ukraine war? So I don't know. It's tough. I trust President Trump and his decision making? Do I think he's going to do his level best to keep us out of it and no boots on the ground and that kind of thing? Absolutely. Can we afford, or should we even try to let Israel go it alone? I don't think we can, and I don't think we should, because, and I'll say this, I'll admit, I'm biased against Israel. I was thinking about that on the way in today. Why is that? Well, one is because, and I'll just start at the basics. My Christian background, brought up in a Christian family and church and all that, that the Jewish people and the Bible and all has a certain foundational aspect. And the fact that I have had a lot of dealings with Jewish people over the years, especially when I was living and working in New York City, and I've got friends of mine here locally and all. And so my experience with the Jewish people has been overwhelmingly positive. And when you look at the contribution of the Jewish people to the world in general, in science, in art, in literature, in Nobel Prizes, all that, it's amazing. So, and on top of that, as the United States of America, the Jewish nation, Israel specifically, they're not only our number one ally in that area, they're our friend and ally. And I make a distinction between the two, because allies, I haven't said this in a while, but if I say it, it bears repeating. Allies are someone who joins with you when it's in your mutual interest. Not knocking that in any way. We've had various allies. Sometimes the ally was the enemy and vice versa. Like Germany and Japan are now our allies. They were our enemies. But a friend, and we don't have that many of them, in my opinion, is someone who is with you even when you're wrong. And that goes that way in life in general. We only have a couple like that. I think Israel clearly falls into that category. And I think that like Britain, and I don't want to leave anybody else, but there's not many that are both friend and ally. I think France has demonstrated throughout our history that they're the same way. So I think you understand what I'm coming from. So as I say, is it possible? And I understand the people on the right, if you will, the MAGA people that say that we shouldn't get entangled in wars. Thomas Jefferson thought that too. So I agree with that in principle, but I'm not sure that the real world will allow that to happen. But President Trump is attending the G7 summit this weekend, or over this week in Canada. And Zelensky from the Ukraine is going to be there. And, I'm not sure. Certainly they're going to be talking about what's happening with Israel and Iran. They're going to be talking about the Ukraine war and all of that. One of the interesting things that has already come out is where they're having, I believe it's in Alberta, Canada, the province of Alberta. And Alberta, I saw some headlines yesterday that their movement for independence, if you will, is gaining steam there. Now, whether or not they want to join the United States is a whole nother ballgame. But it's interesting that the summit is going to be in a part of Canada that is moving to try to be free from Canada. And if they could vote tomorrow to be their own independent state or nation, I think they would. But it's going to be interesting to see. Now, let me just give you what I think is the bottom line about what's going to happen between Israel and Iran. I believe that the key thing is, what will the Iranian people do? What will the Iranian people do? Because we know that there's been several times during this Ayatollah reign, various Ayatollahs they've had, that they have kind of risen up. They've been squelched quite a bit. There is an extensive Iranian movement to overthrow them outside of Iran. And of course, the Israelis are saying they would like to see that. It'll be interesting to see the timing. I don't know if they're capable of it. It takes a lot of courage to stand up against these people when you probably be killed on sight in Iran. But they have demonstrated they have the courage already. And of course, there's news breaking that Elon Musk has put Skylink or Starlink, I guess it's called, over Iran right now. So they have access to the internet, which is a big deal because the Iranians try to control that. The Iranian mullahs try to control that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Iranian people themselves. And I know they would like to. Whether they can and be supported, I'm not sure. But Israel is going to be in for quite a bit of hurt over the next week or so, as Iran clearly is going to use the ballistic missiles to target civilian populations and that kind of thing. And of course, if they hit directly American bases and that type of assets in the region, that will change everything as well. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see, and we'll keep you posted. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break right now. And I hope you will support our sponsors. Look at that little tagline you say that says, advertise with us, contact Freddie if you would like to be a sponsor of our show. We greatly would appreciate that, and we'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth!
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
And we're back here on our Political Pirate podcast featuring yours truly, John Martin, the old salty dog. Normally I have a captain of our pirate ship is Ted Yoho, but Ted is, I say, on assignment, and he is literally in the air right now traveling. And so I am winging it and endeavoring to persevere. Now I want to change gears here and talk about a domestic story here in the United States. In Minnesota, we had some political assassinations. There's just no other way to put it. You probably already know about this story, that there was this gentleman who assassinated a member of the Minnesota House. I think she was the head of the House, assassinated her and her husband, and then shot a Minnesota state senator and his wife. They are recovering. But the dude has now been caught. In case you didn't see it, last night, about 10 o'clock last night, They captured the guy. He was on the lam for a couple of days. This stuff, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely terrible. There's a lot of details still to be worked out. It's interesting, the media, not surprising, but the media is already trying to blame the MAGA movement and Donald Trump. Now, from what I've seen of this guy, he's a mixed bag. He has ties to the left and to the right. He's obviously, they always try to find the motive for these people. Well, bottom line motive for all of these people like this is they're just insane. They're absolutely sociopaths and insane. Now, I'm not saying that what drives them is not important and needs to be found, and if they had accomplices and all of that, because this guy was able to elude police for quite a while in very interesting ways. But the media is already trying to blame MAGA. Let me just tell you a couple things. One, this gentleman, and when I say this, I'm not blaming the governor, Tim Walz. This gentleman, because he may not have even met this dude, but this dude was appointed to a workforce board, a labor board, by Tim Walz. So he worked with and for the Democrats without a doubt. I'm not necessarily blaming them, but there's no question that he did. Now, here's the bottom line as far as to blame, all right? There is way too much violent rhetoric coming out right now. Now, keep in mind, Tim Walz himself, just this past week, and we talked about it on a previous show, came out and said that the Democrats need to get meaner. They need to be more confrontational. Go all the way back to, back when Trump's first administration, Maxine Waters. If you find any of these people out there talking about Trump's cabinet, you get in their face. You tell them they're not welcome here. That type of thing. Most of these shooters have been to the left, right? The guy that killed the CEO of United Healthcare, the gentleman that burned up I forget his name, the governor at the moment of Pennsylvania, burned his place down. You know, the 2 assassination attempts, which, by the way, Netanyahu said that on Brett Baer's show last night, on a special show, that they had evidence that Iran had played a role in 2 assassination attempts against Donald Trump, and he didn't get very specific about it, but that's a side story. But the rhetoric, ladies and gentlemen, they have literally been labeling Donald Trump, even right now, as Hitler. Now, who wouldn't justify taking out Hitler back in the day before or during World War II? And so you hear this over and over and over. And you have the leaders. This is what I think the difference. You have the leaders of the Democratic Party, elected officials in key positions, talking about rising up and attacking people who are of the MAGA bent and that type of thing. We played it last week on our show. You had the mayor of Chicago literally come out and call for all Chicago residents, anybody who basically heard his voice, to stand up and resist ICE, immigration, all of that, to fight against them. Now, this is the federal government to fight against them. Remember, Biden famously said, if you're going to take on American government, you're going to need F-15s and nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff. But this is what's coming out of the left. Am I blaming them for this guy in Minnesota? No, but it's not helping the situation. The guy also had a bunch of No King, and we're going to talk about the No King protests here in just a moment. He had a bunch of their flyers in the car. So who knows exactly where it is, but this is too much violent rhetoric, especially coming from the left, in my opinion. And it's just fueling the flame of these fanatics and sociopaths, potentially on both sides. But I went to let's talk a little bit about the No King protests and the Army Parade, the 250th anniversary that kind of happened somewhat simultaneously, both on the same day, Saturday. I went to a local No Kings protest, and I'll tell you about that in just a minute. But these are very contrasting events on the same day. It was amazing to see the contrast, love it, hate it, or whatever. Very different situations. As I say, I went to the local No Kings protest, and I live streamed the event. If you want to see that, It's about an hour-long live stream. It's not edited, so, it's a little choppy. My son was behind the camera for the first time. We did a father-son event, I suppose, going to the No Kings protest. Check out any of the Facebook sites we're broadcast on. John Martin Talks, my old site, our Ward Scott Files site, and our Media Measures Global site. Check it out. You can see it on there from the No Kings protest, and I really would appreciate your responses to that, questions, if you will. By the way, if you have questions or comments on the show, if you'll post them, I try to check them as soon as our show is over, and I'll get to you as quickly as I possibly can, but I'll respond to any questions that you might ask. But I can only really speak for the local event that I went to. I did witness some of the others on TV and that type of thing, but the local one was, I would say, beyond mostly peaceful. It was peaceful. It was pretty much as I expected. I've been to some of these types of events over the years in Gainesville. If you're wondering where I'm at, today I'm broadcasting live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in beautiful Celebration Point. And this is the podcast room. Here you see all these helmets here. Those are legendary Coach Steve Spurrier. They represent different parts of his career. If you've never been here and you want great food to start with, but if you want to see literally a museum to not only Coach Spurrier's career, but to football and sports in general, you need to come to Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, located in Celebration Point. It's amazing. So anyway, we're honored to be here. But in Gainesville, I call it the San Francisco of the South. Now, if you want to know where I live in a little town called Hawthorne, Florida. But if you look at one of those blue-red county maps and you look at the state of Florida, I'm in that lake of blue, if you will, right in the upper north central Florida, surrounded by red, totally. I've been in a blue wave my whole life. So I'm used to, we got a lot of old hippies, as I like to call them, progressive liberals here, centered around the University of Florida. Sorry if I look like I'm sitting there. They're doing maintenance here and they turned off the air conditioning. And one thing about it, I do sweat a bit. I'm not going to lie about that. But anyway, I'm used to seeing what happened out there. You had a lot of old hippies. Of course, the students are basically out right now. I think summer school has started, but it's a fraction of what the normal crowd is. Most of them liberal, white progressives. I actually saw very few people of color there. Kind of interesting. But I saw and I'll give them a little publicity, a band called the Weeds of Eden. And there's a gentleman named Hutch Hutchinson. I know he wouldn't mind the publicity. He used to be a county commissioner here. I think it's fair to say he's pretty far on the left and liberal. Their band was playing down there. People treated me, and I ran into people I know, people treated me kindly. As I said, it wasn't mostly peaceful. It was peaceful. And the deal with me, if you've ever watched any of my live streams, I'm a happy warrior. I'm a warrior nonetheless, but I'm a happy warrior. I'm not big into confronting people. Now, I will definitely don't take a lot of crap. If you confront me, I'll give it right back to you. But when I'm doing these live streams, to me, the story is the people. I like to talk to the people and find out why they personally, if I can, are there that particular event on that day. Why are they there? And what are they hoping to accomplish? What are their grievances, that kind of thing? Because the story is not me. The story is them. And for the most part, people have trouble articulating why they are there other than Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump is Hitler to them. Now, here's the thing, and I was talking to Ted about this before our show started, before we got on the airplane, and he agreed with me. There are people out there that truly believe this. And they're good, and some of them are good, decent, hardworking American people. I'm not going to put them down. They truly believe that the end of our country is in sight because of Donald Trump and people like me, I guess, that voted for him and all. They don't get it. They don't understand it. They think that Donald Trump is literally a king. They were out there because they think he is a king. And they're passionate about it. And I think they're in the vast majority, but they're very passionate, they're very organized, and they're going to speak their mind. You have a group of people, a lot of them older people, that are genuinely and they can't really pinpoint why, but they're genuinely upset, emotionally distraught. And I likened it to someone who just had a tremendous shock and loss, like, and I'm not talking about the election, although that was a tremendous shock and loss, but they literally feel like they just got out of a car wreck and they lost a loved one, and they're just traumatized. They truly are traumatized, ladies and gentlemen, and you can hear it in their voices, you can see it in their concern, you can see it in their passion, and their tears flowing. And so there was no real coherent message out there that I could see other than Donald Trump bad and democracy is in peril. But one thing I did not hear from anyone, and I asked point blank several times, what is their solution other than getting rid of Donald Trump? That is their only possible solution. So if you want to see that live stream event, check it out. It's on my Facebook page, John Martin Talks, and you can see it streaming there. Now let's talk a little bit about the other major event, to me the biggest event of the day, the 250th anniversary and Army parade at the mall and I'm talking about the mall, the real mall, the Mall of America, I think is what it's called, in our D.C. Capitol, the United States of America Capitol. Now, it was Donald Trump's birthday, and the media tried to make a big deal out of that. This is the only reason that they did that, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. Let me just say this. Donald Trump handled himself perfectly that day. Even his remarks, his speech, of course, he did a swearing in of new enlisted and re-enlisted people, which was amazing. But his speech was spot on, to the point, and it wasn't one of his, and I was hoping he wouldn't. And as much as I love to hear Donald speak, the president speak, he was very succinct, and he kept it to the Army, which was the star of the show, and it was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. Now, it's amazing to me the various reactions that we had from it. You had a lot of people, of course, Fox News covered it. They did a fabulous job, and it was extremely patriotic. And of course, they're going to show the most patriotic aspects of it. But the progressive media savaged it, right? They just absolutely savaged it. They made stories, the crowd size and all that. Now, I love how they make fun of Donald Trump when he talks about crowd size, but yet they're more fixated on the crowd size than anything else. Roughly speaking, from what I hear, there was 250,000 people in attendance at the parade, and of course millions like myself that watched it probably all around the world. But it was impressive. It was a tremendous history lesson. And the Fox News people brought that out quite a bit. It's, I knew all this history. There was a couple things I learned, but, I'm a history buff. I come from a long line of school teachers. And so, I have my lessons every day from my grandmother when I was a kid up until she died. So I knew all of this kind of stuff, but a lot of this history is simply not taught in our public schools anymore. And it's impressive. The history of the Army, the Army is 1 year older than our country, which sounds odd until you really think about it. You got to have an army before you have a country, really, to make that country there. But it was a tremendous history lesson. Now, I've heard a lot, and I had a person call me on my way into work talk about something else today, but we talked about the parade and all that. And he was saying, they're going to spend, and this is a guy that does a lot of public work stuff out there. If he's listening, he said he was. He knows who he is. And he's right about the potential cost of the parade. The estimates are between $30 and $50 million. Did the tanks potentially damage the road out there? I'm sure they did, and there'll be a cost to that. Not cheap. But let's just say, for conversation's sake, that the whole thing would cost $100 million to repairs, the parade itself, the mobilization, all of that stuff, security. Let's just give it a huge figure, $100 million. That sounds like a tremendous amount of money, and some people could say a waste of money. I get it. I get that. But here's a little stat. How much do you think that the U.S. Army spends annually promoting the U.S. Army, from recruiting videos to just promoting, the things you see at like at the NFL and stuff like that. How much annually does the U.S. Army spend? Got any idea? $2 billion with a B. $2 billion. Now, you could argue whether they should or shouldn't, but they spend $2 billion. Now, they've hit their recruiting goals. They were short the last few years, but they hit them in the first 4 months of this year, largely due to Donald Trump being elected. No one really probably doubts that. But think about that. That parade, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch snippets of it. That parade will do more to get young men and women to join the military, the Army specifically, but military in general, than all of the other $2 billion they spend combined. So from that perspective, it was definitely money well spent. Now, I have heard from people like Rand Paul came out, and he's been a little bit anti-Trump lately, but and I think Rand Paul is truly a believer, and he really believes that our deficit spending is the biggest single threat to the country in general, ourselves. And I really don't disagree with him long term, but he was one of the ones that was saying, we shouldn't showcase our military. It looks like audacious. It looks, too adversarial, that kind of thing. And I can understand that, but I didn't get that sense from the parade. It wasn't like watching one of the parades where they're goose stepping and all that and showing the nuclear weapons and everything. It really had a celebratory feel to it. But do I think that it will be watched by people like in Iran and the Ayatollahs and the Russians and all, and they might give them second thoughts? Absolutely. Will it give the Chinese second thoughts? Possibly. Well, and let me just make a quick point on something, because I've been doing some guest appearances on Survival Dispatch. If you haven't seen that, they've got a YouTube channel, but I was on their show Friday night, was live at 7 o'clock. And we were talking about China. This is a side note, but I want to get this point out. We're talking about China and their funding some of these protests and all this kind of stuff. And could they be secretly going to attack us with drones and all that kind of stuff? All of that is certainly possible, But here's my take on China. Do they want to obliterate the United States? In the long run? Quite possibly. But here, and I haven't heard too many people say this, but it's just my opinionated fact, but I think it's a fact nonetheless. China is trying to balance what they're doing because they want to dominate the world. Keep in mind, China has 100-year plans, 1,000-year plans, not a 4-year plan or something like that. So they're in it for the long run. Do they want to degrade us and our influence on the world stage? Absolutely. I don't think there's any denying that whatsoever. And on a side note, since we talked about old Tim Walz, did you see where he came out and was asked about that, about China? And he said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it, he said just this week, you can look it up on YouTube, he said just this week that Donald Trump and the U.S. government now is so weakened internationally and such a terrible message internationally that maybe it's time for China to lead. That's what Tim Walz said, who could have been potentially and could still be, I guess, president of the United States. That's what he said. But back to this China point. So do I think China wants to degrade our influence worldwide so they can ultimately dominate the world? Yes, I firmly believe that. But do they want to take us out right now? No, I don't think so. And the reason is not because they love the United States. They love this. We are their piggy bank. They want to keep us weakened, but just weak enough that we still shop at, Walmart. We still buy stuff on Amazon. Not knocking them, just saying. They want us because their revolution is basically funded by America, right? So they can't afford for us to be destitute and impoverished in that war, because then they would be weakened as well. That's why the Trump tariffs have actually had some impact and why they're coming to the negotiating table. So yes, to sum that up, I believe China degrades us, wants world domination, trying to degrade us worldwide, but they want us to keep shopping until that day comes. All right, let's move on to another subject, and this is David Hogg out. If you don't know who David Hogg is, He is a Floridian guy, but he is the dude that was the vice chair of the Democratic Party, recently elected vice chair of the Democratic Party. He is now out. He has been ousted, and they have replaced him with this person called Kenyatta. I think we have a picture of him. He is a Pennsylvania state representative. There he is. Malcolm Kenyatta was elected as vice chair of the Democratic National Committee on Saturday after the party revoked an earlier election that elevated David Hogg as one of the vice chairs. And this is coming to you from the Hill article I'm using. Hogg, I think that's how you say his name, did not run this time around, and the party will select among 3 female candidates on Tuesday for a second vacant vice chair. Now, this could get interesting because now they've got this slot for a man. I don't know anything about this Kenyatta fella. He is a man of color. If you want to go that route, it doesn't really matter to me, but it certainly matters. Identity politics matters to the Democratic Party. I'm not saying that's why he was chosen. I'm not commenting on his qualifications. But Hogg is out. Remember, he's the one that said they needed to primary old school Democrats. They need to get rid of them. They need young blood, and they need more progressive people elected. But it could be interesting on this choice for a woman. 3 female candidates tomorrow they're going to vote on. Where I say this could be interesting, I want to play you a few videos here. This first one is Governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, in Congress, testifying before Congress, a group of governors, about some things this past week. And I want you to hear him like deer in the headlights look when he's asked the question about identifying what a woman is. Check it out.
What is a woman is the question.
I'm not sure I understand the question here.
Well, that.
What do you want me to say?
I want you to say that a woman like me is an adult human female, that men can't become women. You guys are the party of violence, and you're the party erasing women. You don't respect us. You're a bigot. You're a misogynist. You're a sexist. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. What is a woman?
That was Congresswoman Mace. I believe she's from North Carolina, the great state of North Carolina. But she asked Tim Walz to identify, can you tell me what a woman is? And he's like deer in the headlights, like, I don't understand the question. It's amazing that they can't understand the question of what a woman is. And then he goes on to say, well, what do you want me to say? And she goes into this great blasting of him. I want you to say a woman is like me, a human being, a physical specimen, a human being that deserves respect and everything else. So you got Tim Walz,
what is a woman?
Who is trying to be the next president of the United States, literally cannot identify a woman. The Democrats seem to have issues with that. I want to play you another clip, and this is a congresswoman, I think she's a woman, interviewing Secretary Bessent this week, and listen to this exchange between the congresswoman and Secretary Bessent this week.
There was no tax bill passed during the Biden administration. And I know that because I served on this committee during that administration. So I just wanted to clarify that. And in the interest of time, because our time here is limited, I'm going to ask you to please limit your answers to yes or no questions, and I'm going to jump straight into those questions. Mr. Secretary, do you still believe that the president's tariffs are going to be a one-time price adjustment for American families?
If prices go up, they will be one time.
Okay, well, unfortunately, you appear to be talking out of both sides of your mouth because you yourself have admitted, after conversations with Walmart, that some tariff costs are going to get passed on to consumers. And in fact, we've already seen that prices are rising on many everyday goods.
Congresswoman,
please don't interrupt me. The time is mine. The time is mine. Please don't interrupt me. I will ask you questions and I will grant you an opportunity to answer them, but please don't interrupt me during my time.
With pleasure.
Okay, I know I'm a woman, but please try to limit yourself to answering my questions.
Well, there you have Ms. Sanchez, and I love how she says, well, I'm a woman. And I love the reaction of the gallery there, of the members of the committee, that they're like we've been there, heard. I mean, think about this. If that was like a year or two ago and she had said that, everybody would have froze and kind of been quiet. Would nobody react that way? I think that is is the Donald Trump effect right there, because you know, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of heard all this, right? I'm kind of tired of, okay, you want total equality, which I'm 100%. Hey, I don't care if women rule the world. They rule my household. I mean, in my household right now, I got my wife, who is a female. I got my youngest daughter, who is a female. My granddaughter, who will soon be 5. And my dog is a little poodle, toy poodle, and her name is Lizzie after my mom, and she's a female. So women run my world, and I tell people all the time, I basically just try to do what I'm told, and life is much easier for me on that way. So believe me, I got no problem with women ruling the world. Oh, by the way, I was going to say this earlier, and I forgot it. Talk about a great woman ruler. Remember Golda Meir from Israel? Well, and I posted it on our Facebook sites, she said, getting back to the Israeli-Iranian conflict, and I think this pretty well sums it up, she said that if the Arabs lay down their weapons, there'll be peace. But if Israel laid down its weapons, there'll be no more Israel. And I think those words are as true today as they ever were. But getting back to this story, she says here that I'm a woman and women, they talk over me. Who talks over women in Congress? You can't talk over a woman, period. I certainly can't, even in my household. But, and she's basically accusing Secretary Bessent of being a misogynist, right? Well, I'm not outing the dude. He's outed himself. He is openly gay. Bessent is an openly gay man. If there's anyone who's not a misogynist, it's most likely Mr. Bessent. But, maybe we could take this to the Supreme Court and decide who a woman it was, because they can't decide. But then again, and we're going to play another video from the past, a blast from the past just a couple of years ago. Here is Kenyatta Brown Jackson, who is now on the Supreme Court, and she is asked by the senator, the great senator from Tennessee, to define a woman. Look what she said. Check it out.
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition.
And there you have it. Now that lady right there, Ms. Jackson, is on the Supreme Court, and she's asked to define a woman, and I think she's a woman. And I said this at the time when I used to have another show. Couldn't she have just looked down and just go, hey, this is a woman? I mean, it's just unbelievable how they can't. And this has nothing to do to me with the whole LGBT, Alphabet City, all that kind of stuff, transgender, all that. People, as I said many times before, we solved the pronoun issue in the South a long time ago. We just say y'all and it covers everything. But they cannot define what a woman is. It's unbelievable. And to be fair, I want to show you this picture. The new path. No wonder they can't. There you go, right there. These were top people in the Biden administration. The admiral there and the man or woman, whatever you want to call it, was in charge of our nuclear waste. I mean, no wonder they're confused, because these are women in their book. I can understand their confusion because I am confused myself, ladies and gentlemen. But David Hogue is going to be, he's out. He has made a statement, that he's still going to work for the party and everything else. This comes on top of the statement from the chair of the Democratic committee. His last name's Martin, no kin to me. But he put out a thing the other day that got leaked, by the way. It wasn't supposed to be for general consumption, basically bemoaning that he couldn't do his job and kind of alluding to the fact that Hogue had stopped him from doing it. So it's now I guess they got their ducks in a row. They got this new fella in there. They're going to select from women. But check this out. And this is big. This is actually just broke late last night and this morning. This is actually big news, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not kidding you. Randi Weingarten. Do you know who Randi Weingarten is? You may be confused because they joke about her looking like a man. As far as I know, she's a woman. She is the head of the largest teachers union in the country. And she has been a member of the Democratic National Committee a very important member for about 2 decades now, for a long time at least. I don't know if it's quite that long. But she has just announced that she is resigning from the Democratic National Committee, the head of the teachers union, which is an instrumental part. There's probably no single group that works harder to get Democrats elected, knocking on doors, making phone calls, organizing events, all that, than teachers union. Not knocking them, I'm just telling you, it's the truth. They're the hardest working political union out there. Love it, hate it, or whatever, that's just a fact. And Randi Weingarten is resigning from the DNC, and she didn't get too specific other than to say this. She basically said that it appears that the mission of the DNC now does not coincide with my mission and what I learned to believe. And I'm paraphrasing, but check it out. She basically said that. She praised David Hogue and bemoaned his leaving. I'm not saying necessarily that. She resigns from that. That is a huge deal. It's going to be interesting to see what impact it has, because if it splits the teachers union, I'm not saying it will, but if it does, from the core function of the DNC, that is going to leave them very weakened coming into the midterms. And there'll be no way to replace that. I can tell you right now, because I say it, but if I say it, it bears repeating. The teachers union is the hardest working political organization you will find in any party, but especially the Democratic Party. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go to our Facebook sites, like it, share what we're doing. We have a YouTube site. We're building a new site which will be launched probably this week, by next week. Our new name is going to be Political Pirate Podcast, the 3 Ps, Political Pirate Podcast. Yours truly, John Martin, the old salty dog. And normally on a regular basis, we have our Captain Ted Yoho. He is traveling at the moment. Safe travels to him. Like what we're doing, share what we're doing, support our sponsors. If you'd like to be a sponsor, look at that tab that says Contact Freddie. Do that, because our audience is growing thanks to you every single day. Peace out.